Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week. If you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. In today's tutorial, we're making more winter weather wonders. This time in the form of a lovely textured cowl neck sweater that's a breeze to make and an even greater pleasure to wear. Speaking of, by now y'all already know the drill. But just in case you're new, the most modern crochet tutorials and patterns are here with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 460 grams of yarn. That's 1,040 yards if you're stateside. As for tools, a 6mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us about your pets. When I was a child, I had a Shih Tzu that was more cat than dog. Details for the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and Trinity stitch. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size and explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting the sweater started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 6mm hook, and making sure we're all using a loose grip, we're going to start by making an odd number chain that starts from the top of our shoulder down to our underbust, so roughly where an underwire would be. Now I went ahead and already measured mine out. I need just about 11 inches or 28 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 41. And I actually already have this portion of my piece already completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Now that chain 1 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, and we're all going to get started with our Trinity stitch. Now the first Trinity stitch is going to be done a little bit differently than the rest, so we're all going to start with a single crochet. So starting with that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to bring our hook down into that chain that we blocked off, starting with 1 single crochet. Then we're all going to need to pull up a total of 4 loops. So starting by inserting our hook into the same chain that our single crochet is in, so that occupied stitch, we're going to insert, pull through for a total of 2 loops on our hook. Then into that following chain, we're going to insert, pull through for a total of 3. Into that following chain, insert, pull through for a total of 4. Now 4 is what we need, so we're all going to yarn over, pull through all 4, and we're going to chain 1, and that is going to be our first Trinity stitch. Now let's do our second. So what we're going to do is start by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch is worked into. So into this occupied stitch, we're going to insert, pull through. Into that following chain, pull through, and into that following, pull through for a total of 4 loops again. Then yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1 to complete our second Trinity stitch. From here, it is going to be a repeat of this Trinity stitch all the way down, so let's do this one once more. So starting with the same stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, we're going to insert, pull up a loop for 2 loops on our hook. Into that following chain, insert, pull up a loop for 3, following chain, pull up a loop for 4. Then yarn over, pull through all 4, and chain 1 to secure that Trinity stitch down. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way down, leaving the last 2 chains, then I'll meet you back to do the last one together. So we've just made our way all the way down with our Trinity stitch, leaving the last 2 chains. Now that last Trinity stitch will be done just a little bit differently as well, but it will be started off the same way as our previous Trinity stitch. So all together, insert your hook into that last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through. Into that next, which should be our second to last chain, pull through, and then into our next, which should be our last chain, and pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through all 4. Now we would typically chain 1 to complete this Trinity stitch, But we would like for this edge to be nice and blunt, so all we're going to do is single crochet into that same last chain. Now we should all have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made, and we're going to repeat this row. So we're going to chain 1 and flip. Now let's do our first Trinity stitch together again. The first one, like I said, is always going to start with a single crochet, so into that last stitch from our previous row, insert with a single. Then we need to pull up a total of 4 loops. So inserting our hook into the same stitch that our single crochet is worked into, we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, and next stitch, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook. Then yarn over and pull through all 4. Then to complete this Trinity stitch, we're going to chain 1. Now we're going to do our second Trinity stitch. That one's going to start by inserting our hook into that last stitch that our first Trinity stitch was worked into. So we're going to insert, pull through, next stitch, pull through, and next stitch, pull through, and we should all get a total of 4 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through all 4, chain 1 to complete that Trinity stitch. We're going to continue on with our Trinity stitch all the way down, and I'll meet you back when we have 2 stitches left so we can do the last one together again. We've made our way down with our row 2, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now to do the last one once more, starting by inserting our hook into the last stitch that our previous Trinity stitch was worked into, pull through, into the next, pull through, into that last, pull through for a total of 4 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 4, then to complete the last Trinity stitch, we're going to single crochet into that same last stitch. Now again, we should still have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made. What we're going to do is continue to repeat our previous row until we now have a portion that can reach from 3 inches past the tip of our shoulder to the side of the base of our neck. Then I'll meet everyone back right after an odd number row, then we can get started on our neckline. So we are back. We have just completed the shoulder portion of our front panel. Now I have a total of 25 rows. This width is just about 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. Now we can get started on the neckline. So what we're all going to want to do is start by inserting our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top. The top will be the opposite from where our hook is. That's right at the base of our neck. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 10th stitch from the top. That's just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Now we're going to do our following Trinity stitch row per usual. So since we are along the bottom, we're going to chain 1, flip our work, do our Trinity stitch all the way up, and then I'll meet you back once when our last Trinity stitch is worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker. So we are back. We have just made our way all the way up with our Trinity stitch, and our last Trinity stitch is worked into the stitch right before our stitch marker. Now all we're going to do from here is continue to repeat this Trinity stitch row, making our way across the base of our neck. Now for the design of this piece, we want to make sure that the width of this portion of our neckline is roughly 2 inches less than the width of the base of our neck. Now as an example, the width of the base of my neck is roughly 5 inches or 13 centimeters, so I'm going to continue to repeat this row until I have roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters. But we do want to make sure that we're all meeting back right after an even numbered row, so that we'll be along the top so that we can work straight into the second shoulder together from there. So we are back. My neckline is completed. Now I have a total of 34 rows. My total width is now just about 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters. And since we all should have ended along the top, we're now all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on our neckline. So for those that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 10 stitches. So from where I'm at, I'm going to make a chain 10, then just do my following Trinity stitch rows, no increases, no decreases for the same amount of rows as the first shoulder portion. Then I will meet everyone back. But just as a really quick tip, this tiny little piece will look like a really small neckline, but the back panel will be done exactly the same way, so that we'll have double this amount, so it should be able to fit over our head. Go ahead and get the rest of the front panel completed, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed our second shoulder portion. Now my total width is now roughly 19.5 inches or 50 centimeters. Now once we have one completed, all we're going to do is a second one that is exactly the same. Then once we have both completed, I'll meet you back so we can seam up the shoulders. So once we have both of our panels completed, what we're going to do is seam up the shoulders, and we're going to start by inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We are going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. And what we're going to do is alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop, insert, same top loop within the back panel, insert, and start with just 1 single crochet. Then we're going to do 2 single crochet into that next side row. So finding that top loop, insert into the front panel, next top loop, insert into the back panel, and start with 1 single, then another single crochet into the same top loop. Now it should be easier to work into since everything is already gathered, and single crochet for a second time. Once more, finding that following top loop, insert, following top loop within the back, insert with a single, then again into our following top loop, we're going to insert with 2 singles. So there's 1, same top loop again with a second single. We're going to continue doing this till we don't have any more shoulder rows left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. So we are back, and now that our shoulders are all complete, we're ready to get started on our cowl. First, we are going to need to prep for it, and that's going to start with a single crochet row along the entirety of our neckline. So first things first, we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along our neckline, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, meaning the seam that we just did for the shoulders is along the inside. Then what we're going to do is put 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then once we reach our side rows, we are going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, similarly to how we did for our shoulder seam. And we do need to frame off our front and our back panel. So what I did was inserted my hook into the stitch that I have that's nearest to my shoulder seam, and I'm going to start with 1 single crochet into every stitch until we reach our first side row, and then I'll meet you back. So we have just single crocheted all the way down into every stitch. Now we're going to work into our side rows. But first we are going to need to insert a stitch marker into the first single crochet that we did to mark off that this is one of our panels, and then also into that last stitch as well, just so we know where this portion starts and ends. From here, continue to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row. Once we made our way across, I'll meet you back to get started on this side of our single crochet row. We have just worked our way across our neckline, alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets, and what we're going to do from here is 1 single crochet into every stitch again until we reach our following shoulder seam. Now we should have the same amount of stitches on both sides, and we do want to make sure that we're inserting our stitch marker into that following single crochet, into that first available stitch, and into the last one as well. Then I'll meet you guys back once we have this portion completed. And now that we have made our way all the way up to our following shoulder seam, we're going to repeat the same thing on the other side. So just on the other side of our shoulder seam, start with our first single crochet and put 1 single crochet into every stitch, making sure that we're framing off that first and last stitch, so inserting our stitch markers into there. Then work our way across, then all the way back up, inserting your similar stitch markers to this one as well. Now once we made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space. Then this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try our piece on. If it's a little too tight, reduce some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, reduce some stitches with a tighter grip, but I'll meet you guys back, then we can get started on the cowl neck portion. So we are back. We have made our way all the way around with our single crochet row, making sure that we insert our stitch markers into the correct places. Now right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, what we're going to do is start by making a chain the length that we'd like for the cowl neck to be, keeping in mind that it will be folded in half as well. So I'd like for my total length to be just about 6 inches or 15 centimeters. So I went ahead and made a chain 25. Now we're going to half double crochet all the way down. So once we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're all going to start with an increase of 2 halves. So yarn over, into that chain we're going to insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, that's our first half double. Then into that same chain with a second half double crochet. Then from here, continue with 1 half double crochet into the rest of our chains. So we are back. We've made our way all the way down with our half double crochet row. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So all we're going to do is start by finding our following available stitch, which is our stitch marker stitch. We're going to insert our hook in through there with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's just to connect, and I can take the stitch marker out for now. Then we do need to work our way up to the following row. So slip stitch into that following stitch, into the base, still does not count as a stitch. Then from here what we're going to do is flip our work and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So starting with our first back loop half, we're all going to yarn over. making sure we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base, insert into that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us with a half double. Into the next, another back loop half, and continue with one back loop half into every stitch, leaving the last one so that we can do another increase together. So we've made our way down with our row 2, leaving that last stitch. In that last stitch, we're all going to do another increase of 2 halves, but now within the back loops, so yarn over. Into that next stitch's back loop with 1, same stitch's back loop with a second. Now our row 2 is complete, so we're going to chain 2, flip our work, and get started on our row 3 together. Since we're along the outer edge, we're going to start with an increase of 2 back loop halves again, so yarn over. Into that first stitch's back loop with 1, same first stitch's back loop with a second. From here, continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the base. We've made our way down, and our first 3 rows are completed. Now we're going to connect it into the base once more, and it will be done the same way as our previous row. So just finding that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch. The slip stitch does not count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch, into the base, flip our work, and repeat these 2 previous rows until we're worked into our following stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back to work across our neckline. We are back, and the increase portion of our neckline is complete. Now what we're going to do from here is more back loop half double crochet rows, working across our neckline, but now without any increases or decreases. So this is going to be fairly simple. All we're going to do, since we all should have ended along the bottom edge, is we're going to chain 2, flip our work, put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch, and I'll meet you back at the base. So we've just made our way down with our first half double crochet row, remembering that this one, since we're working across our neckline, doesn't have any increases or decreases. Then what we're going to do is connect it into the base, which will be done exactly the same way as our previous rows. So just into that next available stitch into the base, which should be the stitch right after our stitch marker stitch. Simply insert with a slip stitch to connect. Then work your way up to the following row by slip stitching into that following stitch. Then we're going to flip our work and put 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. From here, we're going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows until we're worked into the stitch that's right before our following stitch marker stitch. Then I'll meet you back so we can work our way up our neckline. So we are back. We have worked our way across our neckline with our back loop half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases. Now we're worked into the stitch that's right before our stitch marker stitch. Now working our way up to our following stitch marker stitch, we're going to do rows with decreases along the edge. So since I have ended along the base, what I'm going to do is work my way up to the following row, flip my work, put 1 back loop half into every stitch, leaving the last 2 stitches. But if you ended along the outer edge, you will chain 2 and flip. Then in the following clip, we can decrease together. So I've made my way down with my first decrease row. Into the last 2 stitches, we're all going to do a decrease of 2 back loop halves. So yarn over into that next stitch's back loop, pull through, next stitch's back loop, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 4. Then our following row is going to start with a decrease as well, so chain 2 and flip. So doing our decrease again, we're going to yarn over into that first stitch's back loop, pull through, next, pull through, yarn over, pull through 4, and continue with 1 back loop half into every stitch. Then just continue to repeat these 2 rows until we're worked into our next stitch marker stitch. Then I will meet you back. So we are back. We have just completed making our way all the way up with our decrease portion of our cowl. Now for the following section, we could have ended along the outer edge, or we could have ended along the base, kind of like how I did. But all we're going to do is the same idea as the other side of our cowl. So from stitch marker to stitch marker, we're going to do increases along the edge of our rows. Then working across our neckline, half double crochet rows, no increases, no decreases. Then closing off this section with decreases into our half double crochet rows along the edge until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so that we can seam it all up together. So we have just completed making our way all the way around with our neckline. Now from here, we're going to seam it together. So first things first, we're going to straighten out our collar so that once we fold it back down, the single crochet seam is going to be along the inside. Then we are going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel, then do a single crochet seam. So we're going to yarn over, pull through everything. Then insert your hook into that first stitch into the front panel, first stitch into the back panel, and single crochet. Again, first stitch into the front, first stitch into the back, single crochet, and continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then I'll meet you back. So we are back and now we're ready to get started on our sleeve, but first we're going to need to seam up our side. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is slipped wrong side out, meaning the seam for the shoulders is now along the outside. We're going to insert our stitch marker into the stitch that we'd like for the sleeve width to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 6.5 inches or 17 centimeters, so I inserted my stitch marker into the 25th stitch from the top. Then we're going to do our same single crochet seam that we did for the collar, making our way all the way up. Then once we reached our stitch marker stitch, do a chain up of 1 and cut, then repeat on the other side. Alright, so we are back. We have just completed seaming up our sides. Now from here we're all going to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, making sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. We're all going to insert our hook into the stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam within the armhole. Then we're all going to make an odd number chain, the length that we'd like for the sleeve to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 10 inches or 25 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 35. Now that we have our chain, we're going to do our Trinity stitch all the way down. Now this isn't going to have anything fancy added to it, so we're just going to chain 1 into that chain that we blocked off for the second chain from our hook, insert with our first Trinity stitch, then continue on making our way all the way down. Then I'll meet you back at the base. So we've made our way down with our row 1. Now we're going to connect it into the base, and it will be connected the same way that we did the collar. So just finding that next available stitch, we're going to insert, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch, that's just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, still does not count as a stitch, and flip our work. Then from here, we're going to Trinity stitch all the way down. So just finding that last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base, insert with a single, and that is to start off our first Trinity stitch. Then from here, just continue to Trinity stitch all the way down. At the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and then make our way back up with our Trinity stitch again. Then I'll meet you back at the base once more. So we are back. We've made our way down with our first 3 rows. Now we're going to connect it into the base again, and it will be done the same way as our previous rows. So just finding that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and Trinity stitch all the way back down. From here, we're just going to continue to repeat these 2 previous rows, no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. We've made our way all the way around with our sleeve. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it up, and this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our side and our collar. So I'm just going to talk you guys through it. It is going to be a single crochet seam. So flip your work wrong side out so that all of our single crochet seams can be along the same side. Then do the same single crochet seam till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then I'll meet you back so we can get started on the cuff. But once we were ready to get started on the cuff, we're going to start by making sure that our work is flipped right side out so our seams are along the inside. Then we're going to insert our hook into any one of the side rows that we have along the bottom edge of our sleeve, and we're all going to do a single crochet row. And what we're going to do is start with 1 single crochet into the first side row, then a decrease of 2 into the next 2. So getting that started, we're all going to start with finding our first side row. This is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert with 1. Into my following 2 side rows, I'm going to find that top loop and the one next to it, then do a decrease. So into that next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through 3. Again, into my following side row, which is this one, insert with 1. Following 2 side rows, do a decrease to help cinch just a little bit. Continue doing this, making our way all the way around. So we are back. Our single crochet row along our sleeve is complete. Now we're going to make a chain the length that we'd like for our cuff to be. Now I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 10. Now we're going to do our slip stitch cuff. We're all going to start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. So bring our hook down into that second chain, or the chain that we blocked off. Yarn over, pull through everything on our hook, and that is our first slip stitch. Let's do another one. Into that following chain, insert, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. We want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. But from here, continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain. We've just put 1 slip stitch into every chain. Now we're going to connect it into the base, and it will be connected the same way as our collar and our sleeve. So just finding that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So into that last stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert in through that back loop or the loop that's furthest away from us, then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Again, next stitch is back loop, yarn over, and pull through everything, and that's it. From here, we're going to continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, then I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We've made our way all the way down. We should all have a total of 3 rows completed. Now we're going to connect it into the base. So again, just finding that next available stitch into the base, insert with a slip stitch, doesn't count as a stitch. Then since we're here, to work our way up to the following row, insert with another slip stitch, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. From here, continue to repeat our 2 previous rows till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, I'll meet you back so we can seam it all up together. We are back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. Now we don't have any more stitches left to work into, so we're going to seam it all up. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So starting by making sure that our work is flipped right side out, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through everything on our hook. Then finding that first stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only in through that front loop. Then finding that next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back, yarn over, and pull through all 3 loops. We're going to do that again. Into that next stitch into the front, insert only in through that front loop. Next stitch into the back, insert only in through that back. Then yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Then continue this, making our way all the way down. Once we have that completed, do a chain up 1 and cut, then repeat everything we did here on the other side. So we are back. Now that both of our sleeves are completed, we're ready to get started on the bottom. We're going to start with a single crochet row that was done exactly like our cuff. So 1 single crochet into the first side row, then a decrease of 2, then make your way all the way around, and I'll meet you back. Now just as a really quick tip, this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. If it's a little too tight, we do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, you do some stitches with a tighter grip, and I'll meet you back. We've made our way around, and our single crochet row for the bottom is complete. Now from here, we're going to do a slip stitch bottom, so the same exact way that we did the cuff. So just to talk you guys through it, we're going to slip stitch into that chain space, then make a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 11 inches or 28 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 40. Then from here, we're just going to do our same exact slip stitch rows as our cuff, so no increases, no decreases, making our way all the way around. Well, we don't have any more stitches left to work into. I'll meet you back so we can seam it all up together. So we have made our way all the way around with our bottom back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it up. Now this seam is going to be done exactly the same way as our cuff. So making sure that our work is slipped right side out, right side up, we're going to do our same exact outside loop slip stitch seam so we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut. Then we're all done. And once when that's completed, we are all done. The last thing we're going to have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye.